All right. Well, today on Behind the Agency, I have with me Matthew O'Bryant. He's the president of Oomph. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, I always like to start these shows with getting the backstory. So, can you tell a little bit about kind of how Oomph came to be, and kind of, I guess the types of stuff that you typically do for clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Oomph was founded back in 2007 by the CEO and founder, and originally we did customizations and implementations for some like old proprietary CMS that he had actually worked for their organization beforehand. It's called CitySoft, and then shortly thereafter, just within a few years, that kind of became irrelevant, and we started working on doing more like custom applications, content management system implementation, those sorts of things, using mainly open source technology, namely WordPress and Drupal. And since then, we've continued to do a lot of work in the open source space. We still work with Drupal a lot, WordPress a lot. We've also dabbled in kind of like some of the headless stuff, headless CMS, Contentful, Prismic, that sort of thing. Working with JavaScript frameworks, React-based stuff, and then along with that, with most of our projects, we also do user research, digital strategy, user experience interface design, all that stuff. But the thing is, for us as an organization currently, a good majority of our revenue is actually from ongoing relationships with our existing clients. So we do a lot, with support maintenance, continuous improvements, continuing to iterate upon the user experience. So that's kind
Cool.
of mainly what we do these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if you've been around as long as you have, usually there's a couple iterations of the company that happens just because the market changes and technology changes, and you just have to kind of figure out how to keep up.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite rapidly, right?
No, I bet you that's been fun. Well, I guess related to that, over the years, probably your approach to marketing and business development has had to evolve, kind of along with that. Can you talk about any of the challenges and kind of the things that you've found don't work and did work along the way? I know
Hmm.
when we talked
Yeah.
before, you had mentioned something about conferences, and you had a unique strategy there.
Yeah. So I would say, given that the company is going on almost like 18 years of existence, there's been some strategies that we've tried over the years. At first, it was mainly just partnerships, honestly, with technology providers, hosting companies, things like that, and that worked really well for a long, long time. As a matter of fact, like WordPress, they have their primary or their, I should say, they're like they call it VIP. It's their hosting platform where they host like enterprise clients and things like that. And Oomph was one of the first, I think, 10 WordPress VIP partners. So we used to get a
Wow.
lot of lead through that. Over the years, that space got more and more congested, and there's more and more partners, and so that strategy doesn't quite work as well. That's not to say that we still don't invest in partnerships with these technology providers. We do, and to a certain degree, it does provide us with some leads, but not really a ton. Um, then I think some other things that we've tried. I mean, we've done, you know, marketing campaigns. We've done uh, cold outreach. We tried that in particular recently with a like a lead gen organization who does cold outreach via email, LinkedIn, cold calling, etc. And didn't really work at all. In fact, I wondered why was that the case, and I think for me it boils down to is, and I listened to dozens and dozens of phone calls. And it's not that the people who are doing the calling weren't trying hard. I mean, they dialed a lot of numbers, right? Um, and and the interesting thing too is that they didn't have a challenge in reaching people. People actually do pick up the phone more so than they will respond to an email, which I thought was an interesting take, right? So we
Hmm.
can get through to our individual or our ideal customer profile, but the struggle is then being able to engage them when you have cold callers who do not have expertise in who you are as an organization, what you do, the services you provide, some of the backstory on projects that you may have done in the past that solved a similar challenge to one that that person is facing now, right? So, in that sense, they can get them on the phone, but then they struggle to engage them further and set up a meeting. So, it's not that I think cold calling doesn't work, it just doesn't necessarily work when you try to hire an outside group to do it. That and that's not to say that it would never work for people, but we just that was our impression. So, um, we are actually trying to uh, do that now, but by building up our own internal cold calling and cold outreach systems at Oomph with people who have actually worked at the company, for a number of
Yeah.
years and have some expertise built up. And, when they get someone on the line, they can have a real engaging phone call with them, a conversation and kind of nurture the relationship and move it along a little bit there. So
Yeah.
we've tried that stuff. We've tried, ads, paid ad, LinkedIn ads, Google ads, that sort of stuff. Again, didn't have a ton of success with it. Not to say that it can't work or it won't work. I just we didn't particularly find it to be a very fruitful source. So one thing that we have, you touched on it, really focused on a little bit over the last couple of years, though, is conference attendance. Um, we've been trying to in the past we would go to conferences that were like technology conferences and then wonder, well, why aren't we getting a ton of leads out of this or making a lot of great contacts? It's because we're attending conferences with folks who do the same thing as us mostly, right? And so it's really not going to the conference where your customers are. So we've tried to shift that a little bit and focus on going to more like industry-based conferences, in particular ones that are higher ed and those that are healthcare focused, where our customer profile is going. So it's typically people in the marketing organization at these places, people in the IT department at these places. Those are our ideal customers. And so we've started to sponsor and attend some of these conferences and have really started to make some good connections and see a little bit of fruit from these labors. One thing, though, that I think is important is, and we've kind of paid attention to this, is when we speak at a conference and we sponsor it, we get way more engagement, right?
Hmm.
Whereas if we're just a table, we may not be able to engage as many people as they're walking by. But if you've spoken, you can do a couple of things. Number one, you can promote that a lot in advance prior to the conference, right? Come see
Yeah.
this person. They're going to speak on this topic. They are clearly experts in this particular challenge that you might face. But also, when the person speaks at the conference, they can say, "Hey, come talk to me," at the table after. That usually generates a little bit more foot traffic. And then lastly, as people are walking by, they oftentimes will say like, "Hey, I saw your talk. Like that was really great." And that also sparks a fair amount of conversation. And then what I find is, the old saying, activity begets activity, right? So if there are more people at your table, people think like, "Oh, maybe there's something interesting going on here." And so you get more foot traffic. So we've actually tried to really make a concerted effort to submit a lot more, applications to speak at these events. And in many cases, we've determined that if we don't have a speaker, we're not going to sponsor because yeah, we're just not getting as much ROI out of it.
Yeah. Do you ever do anything? I mean, I know with like a completely new conference, it's like you don't know exactly what the conference is like, things like
Yep.
that. Do you sometimes like just take the risk that maybe you're going to speak and sponsor, even though it's an unfamiliar one, or do you try to maybe like just go and attend it one year just to kind of see what it
Yeah.
is and kind of whether it makes sense for a following year, and then decide like whether you're going to sponsor and do all those other things in a following year.
Yeah, absolutely. We've done that. We'll send someone to walk the floor, go see who are the vendors that are sponsoring this particular event. What are the topics that people are speaking about? Do we have expertise in those particular areas? Can we solve the pain or these challenges that some of the people are facing? And if there's good alignment there, then yeah, the next year we'll look into what you're talking about, yeah, sponsoring and or trying to get someone to speak at the conference.
Yeah,
I think that
that
makes
makes
a
a lot
ton
of
of
sense.
sense.
Yeah, it's interesting you were kind of talking about some of the things that hadn't worked, and then talking about the conference stuff, and I think there's some interesting um, like patterns there. Like when you're doing a conference, especially if you're speaking, you're providing some value up front to people who fit your ideal client profile. You're not necessarily immediately making any sort of ask of them, but you're like almost kind of inviting them after you've shown them some value up front. Whereas like with a cold calling, it's hard to like hop on a call and be like, "Hey, hear me out." Like you're almost, it's transactional almost right from the get go.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and there's less value you can provide up front. Like now, if it's somebody internally in your company, that knows more of the ins and outs, it's probably more possible that they could provide some value up front, similar to a conference, and that's probably where you're going to see better results from that, I'd imagine.
yeah, absolutely. And kind of going into it, not assuming, but being aware of some of the different challenges and pains that this particular person might face, and being
Hmm.
able to skillfully say, "Hey, the reason I'm calling you is I have other clients who have faced XYZ challenge. Is that something that your organization is dealing with? Yeah. Can I tell you a little bit about how we solved it for this particular other client?" And then I think really quickly you're able to hone in on a pain point and then provide some value, like you're saying, to that individual, and establish a relationship that hopefully you can nurture into something.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, one of the other things I wanted to kind of dig in around is, I think you had said something about needing to give time to different like sales and marketing efforts to things to really like let them be successful. Sometimes we want to switch gears and be like, oh, that didn't work, but we only did it for 1 month or something like that. So
Right.
I'd love for you to kind of unpack that.
Yeah, yeah. So I was speaking to somebody about conferences before, and I asked them, like, do you find value in them? Do you feel like you get business and leads out of them? Like, what's your expectation? And they made an interesting observation. They said it usually takes about 3 years, and I was like,
Hmm.
whoa, 3 years, huh? And that made me think of the gardening analogy, right? If you plant something, there's an
Oh yeah.
analogy that says, okay, yeah, you plant a plant. First year they sleep, second year they creep, third year they leap. And I feel like that's a really good analogy for something like this, right? Like first year, you're just really kind of introducing them to your brand, right? They don't know anything about you. They've never met you before. Second year, maybe they, oh yeah, I remember. Okay, I actually I spoke to you last year, didn't I? And you can start to establish a bit of a rapport. Third year, you're still there, right? Now you built up a little bit of trust with them, and perhaps this could lead to something. What's interesting too is particularly in these, I wouldn't call them small, but they're like small to medium size trade or industry based conferences. Everybody knows everybody. It's actually kind
Oh
of
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, you go to the larger conferences and there's thousands of people there. No one knows anybody, but everybody at these like between 250 and 750 people attending a conference, they really do know each other. And so uh, if you're sponsoring and you're speaking year after year, they're actually going to get to know you, and that's really, I think, how business is done with them. They do business with the people they know, so you got to be there many years to be able to really start to see the benefit of it.
Yeah. No, that totally. Rings true from my experience too. I think a big part of it is, um, like a lot of times agencies they try to serve too many different industries, and so they don't pick conferences that are focused enough. So they don't give themselves enough time
Yeah,
to like get to know everyone who's at one of these 250 to 750 size conferences. So I think that the more you have a clear ideal client, in a particular industry, and you can go and decide, okay, we're going to hit these 5 conferences because this has our ideal clients at it, and we can kind of start planting seeds now and get to know more of these people. Um, yeah, it's you're basically focusing your attention, um, your marketing and your sales attention.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think too with some other tactics in terms of it taking time. One of the things that has been a struggle for us is, you know, we're experts in user experience, design, development, like those sorts of things, but we're actually not marketing experts, right? And so I think sometimes there's this thinking that you have you want instant gratification from your marketing efforts. You expect to see like I
Mhm.
paid X amount, I'm gonna get Y amount out of it. And the thing is like I'm not an expert in that industry. And so like maybe I get a 2% conversion rate and I'm like, well, that's really disappointing. But an expert might say, like, actually, no, 2% is really good. You should stick with this. Or like instead of saying like, well, 2% isn't great, but if you made these changes, we could get it up to 5%. I think that is often too one of the challenges that maybe some of us in this industry face is like, you know, we're not marketing experts or right. And so maybe we don't know if what we're doing is in fact working. Um,
Mhm.
or if it's not, or if it just needs a little fine tuning and it could be better.
Right.
And I think that's been a struggle for us too over time.
Yeah, kinda like knowing even just, like, what the benchmarks are. You're like, "Are
Sure.
other people in our same shoes doing about the same?" It's like, "Okay, we're not far off." Yeah, we could always improve, but at least we know that we're not way behind, our competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'm curious, when you, look forward, 3 years out, 10 years out, what do you see as kind of your biggest opportunities and challenges on the horizon?
Yeah. New business acquisition has been a real challenge for us. Um, over the next few years, we're really working hard to develop our own internal expertise from like a business development and sales strategy. One major change that we're actually currently implementing to the business is, for small organizations, it's hard. Oftentimes, people wear many hats, right? And so, up until now, we've had a dual account management slash sales business development type role, where people are because we look at that as like rev gen, right? Like grow the existing account, but bring in new accounts.
Right.
And it's hard to have somebody be really good at all of those things. So we're actually kind of separating that out as an organization, and we're going to have people just focused on, growing existing accounts, and then people who are entirely focused around sales and business development, so that we can actually bring in some new logos to the business. And so, because we're really good actually at growing our existing accounts, most of our growth over these, 18 years has been through our existing clients. Our average client length is that we've been working with is like over 5 years. So we're really good
Oh,
at
wow.
like consistently working with clients. Yeah. But we've got to focus on developing that sales engine, that lead gen engine, and helping us to grow in that way. Of course, uh, you know, AI has got to factor into it. We've got to talk
Yeah.
about artificial intelligence, right? Like opportunities and growth over the next, 3 to 10 years. You know, we've got to get good at using these tools, right? Because on one hand, if we look at them right now as enablement tools, these things can help our teams to move faster, do more, be more efficient, improve quality, and that's fantastic. But on the other hand, I think our industry as a whole is also facing the possibility that a lot of the tasks that we do could be replaced by AI agents, automators, right? I've seen some pretty cool demos recently
Hmm.
in the Drupal community, where it's amazing. It's like you can point a site, or you can point an agent at a URL, and it can migrate that entire site over into Drupal, create a custom theme for you that matches the exact look and feel of your existing site, migrate all the content for you, and it's like click of a button. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, that's scary for us as an agency to think about, like, where this is going. Um, but I then try to remind myself, it's just creating a copy of something. It's not actually creating anything new per se,
Yeah.
right? And what I keep telling myself is, you probably did this, right? When you're a kid, you make a copy of a cassette tape, right? Or
Oh
like a
yeah.
copy of a VHS tape. What happens when you make a copy of a copy? Gets worse over time, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where we're at right now anyway. AI is just making copies of copies. And so it's not really creating per se anything new. So I think just for us as an organization, like, we need to just get really good at being able to use the tools to help to improve our creativity and what we're coming up with, on the
Yeah.
strategy side, on the user experience side, on the design side, or even creative ways to use AI to solve a problem for a client. I think that's where we really want to focus on in definitely the next 3 years. 10 years, man, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
it moves so fast. I don't know that I can think 10 years out too specifically, but yeah.
For sure. Well, I was curious. You mentioned having multiple clients, like your average client sticks with you for a good long time. Um, I'm curious, like kind of how you set up um, your products or services. Like, do you have you productized them? Is it just like very custom for each client? And so, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
there's a retainer element in all of them, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So usually the initial engagement is not productized. It's a very custom solution to that particular client, right? It's how long, when someone says how much does a website cost, it's like, well, how long is a piece of string, right?
Yeah.
Everything is very different, very different. So the upfront project is always extremely custom. In terms of the support and maintenance part of things, we have productized it to a certain degree. So we do have, like, kind of these packages that people can choose from, where you get a set amount of, you get the maintenance kind of built in. You get a set amount of professional service time to iterate, update, etc. And there's certain levels that you can choose, and then there's like the enterprise, which is where it gets pretty custom. But in the past, it was like on that side of things, everything was custom, everything, and that just it was too hard to keep track of and whatnot. So yeah, we've definitely made packages on the support and maintenance side of things, and it seems to be doing really well. Our clients feel like they're getting a lot of value out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very cool. Well, this has been super interesting. I'd love to give people kind of a way to reach out to you and connect with you, just to learn more about Oomph and kind of how you're approaching growth. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, you can go to our website for sure. Oomph Inc. OOMPHINC.com. You can email me. It's just O'Bryant. So MOBRYANT at oomphinc.com, or look me up on LinkedIn. And I'd love to chat with you and learn a little bit about, like, what you're up to, what are some of the problems you face, and just not because, I mean, I'd love to work with you, but just to have good conversation. It's always interesting to see what folks are doing and dealing with. So, yeah,
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. This has been helpful.
yeah, it was great to be here. Thanks for having me.